What's the most messed up thing you saw at a sleepover? Story 1. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally, I was up, and her mom took me to the bathroom and showed me a trash can with poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We've joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. That is messed up. Perfect story to start the video with. Why? Why poop in a trash can? Was this the dream of some girl that couldn't do this kind of thing at home? Did they think everyone would just have a laugh over the situation? Did this mother actually think someone would just confess if they were confronted one by one? Story 2. Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night, he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us, in his room for the night, we weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The doorknob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. Holy hell, my inbox. Okay, the jar was for emergency use only and was emptied and washed in the morning if he used it. Probably rarely used it since most kids that age can hold it all night. He was a bad kid and stayed in trouble. Pretty sure the lock thing was to send him to his room and make sure he stayed there. Don't know about the parents' spicy habits, but I'm not surprised that most of us immediately jumped on the pharmaceutical-fueled multi-person spicy time responses. What if there was a fire? That last question is a very good one, but something else is bothering me. This was a bad kid who was always in trouble, so the parents found it necessary to lock him in at night. Pee jar aside, I can sort of understand why they want to keep him under control. But if so, why the sleepover? If he was that really a bad of a kid, why did he have a sleepover with friends? Why was he allowed that? I wonder how long this phase lasted. Did he stay a bad kid? Or did someone finally call Child Protection Services on these parents for this type of action? Story 3. I grew up in a very rural area of the southern U.S. A middle school girlfriend was having a sleepover, and later in the evening, her mom told us that she, the mom, could talk to the spirits of dead people through her daughter. She got her daughter drunk on wine and hypnotized her. I don't know how long we sat in that room, but a lot of time went by with her mom demanding spirits speak through her daughter. Her daughter admitted to all sorts of terrible things, supposedly dead people's spirits speaking through her. This was over 30 years ago, and I still remember it. I remember the mom sitting in a chair, chain smoking, and her daughter slumped over in a chair, seemingly dog drunk, slurring confessions of unaliving, self-unaliving, being unalived, etc. She told us sometimes spirits would manifest in such a way that her daughter would attack her and tear the house up. It was really strange. Her daughter was a very quiet girl. The things that spoke through her were not like her at all. All right, forget the last story. Why did no one call Child Protective Services on this family? Was it too rural an area for them to go up to? This child is going to suffer from severe brain damage for being forced to be drunk for so many times for so long. What was up with the mother who was so convinced that this was true? Do you think this type of behavior was visited on the mother? Story 4. When I was 12, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having spicy time in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of, "Stop, we're going to wake up the kids." My dad gets up and walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See? Fast asleep. I should have won an Oscar." Edit. I had no idea this would blow up. Thank you for all the love, strangers. I have no idea how this works. So this obviously messed with me going forward. Any trips after this, I just waited my parents out. They would say small things like, "Going to bed anytime soon?" And I'm just flat out like, "Nope." They would fall asleep and I won. In hindsight, as an adult with kids, I do feel bad for sausage blocking every future family trip. Story 5. I was at a sleepover at a friend's house, and there were about 10 of us bundled into the living room. Me and another girl were the last ones up watching some random stuff on TV. Think it was Speed? Anyway, one of the girls sat bolt upright, and the light of the TV was reflecting off her face, and her eyes were glazed over, and she wasn't responding to anything we said. She then got up, and we obviously followed her. We guessed at this point she was sleepwalking. Into the kitchen she goes, opened up one of the covers, pulled down her PJs, thrust her hips forward, and started peeing. We stood there in shock and hysterics, and of course, none of us wanted to touch it, so we just kinda shut the door on it. Next day, we could not get her to believe us. Apparently, had never slept or walked before. Story 6. When I was like 9 or 10, I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy hell, did I find out how much. He did something really minor, like leave his socks in the living room, and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he ticked her off again that night, and she wailed on his hide so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho, the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. Edit. I have no idea how this guy turned out. We moved away soon after, and Googling his common name is like looking for a John Smith. Also, another guy with the same name was unalived in the same town. It wasn't him, so it's buried pretty deep. Sounds like that whole town is under the influence of something. I feel really bad for this kid. I wonder what he was like before this. Did any of the other kids think he was weird, or was he able to pass himself off as normal? Story 7. Sleepover in a friend's basement with 4 of us there. I think this was 4th grade. Sometime around midnight, the host friend's dad opened the door at the top of the basement stairs to ask if we wanted snacks. But right as the words started out of his mouth, he came tumbling down the stairs and hit his head pretty hard. He didn't move for what felt like forever, and we heard from the top of the stairs some delirious yelling. My innocent self thought it was the host's mom, afraid because her husband just tripped and fell. No, my other friend later explained to me that no, the host mom was drunk off her butt and pushed the dad down the stairs. So, yeah, I guess I witnessed a wife trying to unalive her husband. Story 8. When I was about 15, there was a couple in my cousin's congregation that offered to host a sleepover for some of the teen girls. I was staying with my cousin at the time, so I went with her to their house for a sleepover. When I got there, I realized that this couple only had one kid, and it was a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. The couple set us 5 teenage girls up in the basement. It was furnished and carpeted, not a creepy basement. And the wife set out a bunch of snacks, and then we didn't see her or the little boy the rest of the night. But the 30-something dad spent most of the evening with us, offering us sips of his Kahlua drink and leaving the liquor cabinet open when he would announce that he was going to another room. I was creeped out, but I was so sheltered at the time I didn't understand why exactly until years later. Story 9. I slept over a friend's house when I was around 10, and we were playing Nintendo. At some point, he yelled, "Poop!" And without a word, his dad comes storming into the room, pulled him up, and just started spanking him in front of me, then took him out into the hallway to scold him. Then he just came back as if nothing happened, but with a red face and teary eyes. It was the most awkward, uncontrollable night of my life, having to continue on pretending to have a fun sleepover after that. But I felt so bad for him. I did my best. It was what I imagined sleeping over at Butter's house would be like. I have another sleepover story that always sticks in my mind too, but does not deserve its own post, so I'll just summarize here. Watched Aladdin at a birthday party. Woke up later that night to friend's older bro jerking off noisily in his sleeping bag with the movie paused on a scene of Jasmine. Yeah, Disney animators know what they're doing. There's a story that new artists who come to Disney and come up with new stories and shows are shown a booklet of previous Disney characters in all sorts of corn images that were taken from the net. They're explicitly told to be prepared that this is going to happen to your characters. So not only does Disney know about our spicy images that we create, they collect them as a warning to new artists. Kind of funny. Story 10. One of my friends went over to his mate's house for a double date. They were watching Point Break and decided to eat cookie dough as a snack while the owner of the house was absent-mindedly eating, not realizing that nobody else was. And he ate an entire king-sized roll to himself. They all went to bed and the owner went up to his room. Around the middle of the night, they hear messed up sounds coming from upstairs and all go to investigate, including the girl the owner really liked, because he's clearly in trouble. The owner was buck naked in his ensuite calling for help, pooping and vomiting violently and uncontrollably as the dough had fermented and expanded in his stomach and had to get the ambulance. Don't think they dated after that. Story 11. One of my BFF's dad tried to get me drunk and made a pass at me. I was 15 and staying at my one girlfriend's house. Her dad tried to be cool and buy us wine coolers. So she and I were up drinking and listening to music in her room. Her dad had to listen right outside the door because when I went out into the hallway, he popped right up in my face. He started getting way too close and handsy. This was not my first rodeo. I've been dodging my mom's sugar daddies and boyfriends for years, so I saw what was happening and escaped into the bathroom. I pretended to be sick until he left the hallway. I was friends with his daughter until college. I just made sure to never be alone with Dad again. Sad thing is, I wasn't her only friend who he tried things with, but we never talked about it until years later. Story 12. I had a friend whose dad had a piranha fish tank. I really wanted to feed them a hot dog, but her dad told me they already ate during the night. I snuck down to where the fish tank was, and there was picked clean fish bones in the tank. The dad was down there watching football, and he spotted me and asked me if I still wanted to feed the piranha. Being a small piranha-obsessed child, I nodded and produced the hot dog I saved from the barbecue dinner we had. It was the most terrifying and awesome thing I have ever seen. 10 out of 10 would never want to watch 3 piranha go at a hot dog ever again, at least not in person. This guy sounds like he had an awesome time. It also sounds like he developed a healthy fear of piranha. This one doesn't sound so messed up. Maybe the way the piranha ate the hot dog were messed up, but I don't think it's something tied specifically to sleepovers. Anyway, be careful what you wish for. You may just get it. Story 13. Lights go out in my dorm. No teachers. Just 30 11 to 12-year-olds that don't know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts. A few others. Then, I vividly remember a distinct sloppy sound followed by a panicked, "Oh!" A kid pooped himself. I would also like to note this was not the only public pants pooping by this kid. He did it again final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him. That's a whole different story. Story 14. Not something I saw, but one of my friends in high school told a group of us girls at a sleepover that she'd been babysitting the previous weekend, and the girl reported to her that she was being violated by her uncle. My friend was so upset and scared to tell her parents, they were family friends, and hadn't told anyone. We made her go upstairs and tell her mom. Her mom called the other family, and we basically heard both her parents sobbing off and on all night. The other parents called the cops, and as far as I recall, the uncle was arrested and spent some time in prison. My friend was really scared she'd have to speak in court, but didn't have to. Story 15. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things. Went into his room, lost the TV remote, shut the door too loudly, and proceeded to beat the hell out of her. Pull her hair and hold her down and punch her in the sides. Literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us and easily had 100 to 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her and how unfazed she was by it. If something like this happens to you, don't get desensitized to it. Speak up. Say something. The fact that she was able to shrug it off probably says this has been happening for a long time. If the parents won't listen, tell someone else. Find someone you trust. Find any adult you can trust. There are some people that are willing to help. Story 16. 5 of us at a friend's mom's house in high school, 7 to 8. Woke up and there were 4 of us. One of the guys there was apparently in the mom's room smashing the guy's mother. The worst part? Apparently it wasn't a new thing. The mom had been picking off her son's friends and smashing them to make her ex-husband jealous. Edit. No, I did not get a turn. But then again, I didn't make a pass at her. I don't think he knew his mom was doing it. Everyone was pretty cautious to not spill the beans to him until after graduation. When he did find out, he was more disappointed in his mother than ticked at his friends. Seems like a really weird family dynamic. Story 17. I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with 2 other girls when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally, 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily, he survived, and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares, though. Story 18. Girl put a massive ant in her vagina right in front of me like it was nothing. The same girl introduced my sisters and I to the choke yourself out game, where you take several deep breaths, hyperventilate, and hold your breath until you pass out. Whoever fakes it has to sleep alone. Needless to say, my mom was ticked when she found us all unconscious in different areas of the bedroom. Edit. Thanks for the awards. I'm only 2 months in. So much appreciated. Girl put a massive ant in her vagina in front of me like it was nothing? She's got a bright future in a very niche corn genre. Yeah, I think there's a reason they don't mention the age of the girls in this story. If they did, I think we'd all be under some sort of list, or at least under arrest. The hyperventilating game almost seems normal compared to that one. I don't think it's even worth mentioning that part. Why did she think it was normal? Was it introduced to her? Or did she come to this conclusion by herself? Story 19. Not really messed up, but I was terrified one night I slept over at my friend's house. I woke up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 a.m. or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually, I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. Story 20. When I was in the 6th grade, I was going to stay the night at a friend's house, but we ended up at another kid's down the street. This guy ended up talking about how he would hump his bed until there was a wet spot on his boxers. He ended up doing this while we were in the room watching TV, and then showed us the wet spot. And that was how I learned how to jerk off. Same. I was so confused when I saw the wet spot in my bed after doing this. Story 21. At my buddy's birthday party, we had a bunch of us sleep over in a tent in his backyard. One of my friends said, "We're all guys. Is it okay to be naked together?" Well, some of the guys agreed, and some didn't. I was way too shy to even be in my boxers around my friends at the time. Hell no, I was taking my clothes off. Well, birthday boy agreed. Micro penis. After seeing the other boys' normal-sized parts. Oh, that's going to be very painful in the future. Those boys are never going to let him hear the end of this. Those boys are never going to let all their friends hear the end of it. Those boys are never going to let the rest of the school know the end of it. That poor kid needs to develop some thick skin really quick. Story 22. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other two again. Story 23. We were playing hide and seek with my friend's little sister, and I went into the unlocked bathroom while loudly saying, "Where could she be? Maybe in here?" The little sister was 5, we were 10, and the father was jackhammering his member while staring at himself in the bathroom mirror and had his other hand tweaking his nipple. I left and walked home. Story 24. The dad's mistress came over. Apparently, the mother knew of her existence, and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly, did not cause a divorce. How did it not cause a divorce? What happened? Did he finally break things off with the mistress? Did the wife just not care and let him go on? Was it a situation where the wife wasn't interested in any spicy time with the husband and just let him have his fling with the mistress? Did it lead to a divorce down the road? Story 25. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with a whole year group, about 200 11 to 12-year-olds, to get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds, separated by gender, about 30 to a room. Story 26. Oh boy. Well, the house opposite the living room had a visible bathroom. It was the back of their house, since the back of the houses were connected with their gardens. We saw a guy who had hung himself. That was not really nice. Story 27. My friend started having phone spicy time with her boyfriend while we were watching a Pixar movie. I hid in the bathroom for like 20 minutes so I could convince her I was sick so I could get a ride home from my mom. We were also in junior high. Now, at this point, you would think that we're going to go for the cheap joke by saying that this girl was talking about toys with her boyfriend while they were watching Toy Story. But we're not going to do that, because quite honestly, there are too many other jokes you could make with other Pixar movies. I'm sorry, the jokes are just flooding my brain way too much. I think we need to move on to the next one. Story 28. When I was around 13 or 14, a kid I invited over to my sleepover birthday party decided to strip down to his tidy whities right before cake and ice cream. Myself, my parents, friends, and relatives were mortified. Apparently, it was normal behavior at his house. Story 29. A friend of mine at school used to recount her side of entire conversations from the day in her sleep, like a tape recorder. It was both weird and highly informative. Story 30. I took a bath, and when I got out, my friend told her mom I had soap in my vag. I never said that, and her mom made me get back in the bath and washed my bits for me. All right, everybody, all together, say it with me. Ew! You don't do that. You don't do that with kids. Nobody's kids. Why was this considered normal? I think this was behavior passed down from the mom who also had this kind of stuff happen to her. Story 31. Found my friend's older brother's anime body pillow. He had clearly done the dirty with it. His body pillow stands up on its own. Story 32. Woke up to my friend watching Korn on the PS3. That happened to me once a good 9 to 10 years ago. Story 33. A kid walked on the backyard monkey bars, slipped, fell, hit his chin, bit his tongue off. Ah! Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.